Well, good afternoon, listeners. You're listening to Lament of Hope podcast, and I'm your host, Danielle Richardson. And I am talking with Ruby Bentall. She is a English actress. She's been in several BBC TV series that I enjoyed. She was in Lark Rise to Candleford as Minnie, and then Poldark. She played remind me of
Verity.
Verity in
Yeah.
Poldark. And then she was also in a recent one. Was it called The Serpent Queen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I sent out an invitation to her agent to just see if this would work out, and it was a good time to connect with her. So I'm very excited to be talking with her and learning about her life. And for those of you listening, she has an apron on. She was just telling me she had just finished dinner making a baked potato. Which is good for her because I don't even know how to bake potatoes, which is really sad. My husband keeps trying to tell me to make them, and I am too lazy, so I don't.
It's so easy.
Um,
You literally just put it in the oven. It's the easiest meal ever.
yeah, but I guess for me, the hard thing is whenever I've made them, they've ended up not being soft enough.
Oh yeah, it takes a while. Like a
So,
good hour.
right, and that's my problem is when I start dinner, sometimes it's like just scramble, and so. Because
Yeah,
my
this
husband
takes a
gets
bit more
home from
prep
work
time.
and he's like, "When's dinner gonna be ready?" But Ruby, we were just talking earlier, and I kind of want to start out with this because I think this is really important. You were saying that this is a time of your life when you're not doing any acting at the moment. Um,
No.
and I wanted to talk to you about that because I do think a lot of, and I assumed this before talking to some of the actors I've talked to, that you always had something to do. If you were in a
Hmm.
famous movie or a really good known BBC series, then you would always have a job. And I didn't realize until, I don't know, like a year ago, that a lot of actors, your average actor who may be very good at what they do, don't get jobs all the time. And that it's
No.
like a continual process. And so, what has that been like for you? Did that surprise you? Did you expect that?
Well, so both my parents are actors. So I
Okay.
grew up realizing what an unstable profession it was. So I
Okay.
think I was very lucky. I went into this with my eyes completely open about how hard this would be. But then I think I think what I maybe didn't realize was that, as you say, you can be in some hit program or you feel like you're, achieving and doing well and working your way up, and then it can all just disappear again. And it
Mm.
feels like that all meant nothing. Or even if it didn't mean nothing, it doesn't mean that you're going to get another job.
Yeah.
I remember when we were filming Poldark, one of the actresses was like, "Oh, we've made it now." And because I'd done Lark Rise and had, a similar time in between Lark Rise and Poldark, I was like, "Oh no, just because we're in a BBC series, we don't think that's how this works. It's not how it works."
Hmm.
Um, and there is definitely a thing you want to try and keep the a kind of buzz around you and keep the momentum up. That is always the goal, but it's so easy for it to slip away.
So do you have to, when you're not on a job, do you just keep searching like online or how do you find out about roles and things that you might
No,
want to
so I
do?
have an agent.
Okay.
So my agent does all the searching for me, and then now we mostly do self tapes instead of auditions. It's very rare to go in and meet a director now.
Hmm.
You just put yourself on tape. You get given a scene from a TV series, tape it yourself, and then send it out to your agent. And then 90% of the time, you never hear whether you got it or not. It just, you sort of wait a few weeks and go, well, I guess I didn't get that one then. um, so it's quite brutal. But you have to be so tough. You have to have the toughest skin because basically it's this job is like 90% rejection.
Yeah.
And it feels like the whole world is telling you you can't do this. And you just have to have this inner confidence to be like, I know I keep not getting the job, but I think I'm good at this. So I'm going to keep going.
Well, it
Um,
doesn't seem, even your roles though, it doesn't seem like you're typecast in a certain type of person. Do you think you are? Because it seems
I
like you're in a
think
lot of different things.
I do a lot of period stuff, which I
Yeah,
love,
that's true.
luckily. I think I've done so much more. Like, I could probably like count on one hand how many times I've been in like a pair of jeans. But luckily, I love costume dramas and I love it all. So that's like not a problem. I think sometimes I'm obviously like kooky, you know. In this industry, obviously, most people are incredibly good looking. Even the men are very, very good looking. So, you know, if you're not kind of that look, then obviously you're never going to be the lead and you're never going to be, you'll always be the sort of friend part or the
Hmm.
cookie cookie cousin part or you know whatever that part is. And but that's okay. Like I feel really happy in that sort of knowledge that that's my sort of role, and I feel often those characters are like the more interesting characters. So that's actually quite fun.
You know, it's interesting you say that because I've always thought this isn't to be mean. I think there are a lot of beautiful actresses, physically beautiful, who act well. Of course they do, right? But there's also a lot of them who really don't act that well. They're just very pretty, so you like
Yeah.
watching them. So, I mean, is that hard for you? Because, I mean, just being on social media for me, I see all these different podcasters and they look or talk so much more podcasty and look really great on camera. And I know that what my niche is and I stick with it, but sometimes I really do envy and wish I looked this way or had this. Is that hard for you at times? Like, do you ever feel like, why can't you just let me do this? Because just because I am more average compared to maybe, I'm not an Audrey Hepburn or a Marilyn Monroe, whatever, I would really still do well at this part because most people look like average, right? We don't have
Right.
like these like extremes so often.
Mm,
Do you ever feel that way or?
yeah, I mean, it's so hard not to compare yourself. I compare myself all the time to people. And yeah, it's incredibly frustrating when you're watching some show and it's a very beautiful man or woman, but they're being really bland or really bad, and you just think, oh my God. But it's sort of the way of the world, isn't it? It's this is what this another part of this industry that feels so unfair. It's not. It doesn't often seem based on talent.
Yeah.
There are so many factors of why someone can book a job, and it feels like luck so much, and it's something so out of your control that I think it's a really like most professions. You sort of think if I get into a profession and I work really hard and I do all the steps, that you're gonna get somewhere eventually. But that's just not how this industry works. You just need a lucky break, or you need a sort of random thing, and
Hmm.
it's sort
Yeah.
of it's a really unfair profession.
Now, why do you do it? Do you just love when you
I
get a
love it.
part? You
Yeah,
love acting it? Yeah.
I love it. It's sort of like nothing else when you're working. It's this amazing thing where you can just be someone else. I don't know, were you sort of did you love playing like make believe when you were a kid?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Yeah. And I've like just don't feel like I've ever grown out of that. I just sort of live in a fantasy world. I think I always slightly live in the future and I've got all these things, and it's and also sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm a really boring person, and then you get to go to work and be someone totally different. And also I think a lot of actors, you know, we're quite fascinated by humans and what makes people tick. And you know, you have to often have quite good empathy and be inquisitive about humans. And I think that's another great part of the job where you get to like think about this character and go, why are they doing that, and what's the sort of what's the psychology behind that. And that's such a such an interesting thing to be able to do, and then try and put all those thoughts and express it and show it and feel it and be it, and it's so much fun.
Was there a role you've done you found particularly different than you that it was harder to kind of get into that mind space, that it was hard to find any similarities?
Yeah, I feel like I don't feel like as a person I have much gravitas.
Hmm.
I'm really hoping it's going to come with age. Um, fingers crossed. um, and so if ever I have to like play a character, like if I ever have a tape that comes through, like an audition tape that comes through, and they're like, she's really tough and she's scary. I just know
Oh,
I can't do it. And I'll like really try, and then I watch it back and I'm like, there is no way you're booking that job because you have not got that in you. It's like a sort of, some people have it where things I can do well are sort of like with Minnie. I loved playing naive and like high energy people, and with Verity, for instance, I loved playing sort of in love. Is such a nice thing to play, and sort of sweet I can do quite well. I do think most actors, there are some exceptions where some actors can play everything, but I think the majority of actors are limited to a certain thing and can't, we can obviously feel things differently and things, but I think we do get typecast for a reason because that's what we are best at.
yeah. No, I mean, it's also, though, isn't Minnie and Verity, aren't they both rather optimistic people?
Yeah.
Or like peace,
Yeah.
like, or at least Verity, I really remember because that's what I've watched more recently. She was very much a
Mm,
peacemaker,
totally.
wanting, between two people, always wanting to make sure everyone was okay. And then it was a huge deal for her to break from her family to marry someone she loved.
Hmm. Yeah, I do often play quite kind people, which is why I was really pleased to play Angelica in the Serpent Queen, because she's like this sort of evil, like sort of witchy woman, and I was like, I don't know how I've got this job, but I was really happy to sort of break away from the box a bit. But I watch it and I sort of go, I don't think this is your best performance. It's sort of, it's fine. I mean, I don't mind it, but it's sort of, I don't think it's playing into my skill set as an actor.
Do you, is there a particular type of film you'd like to be in that you haven't yet?
Um, I until early this year. So the last job I did was a Shakespeare play, and before that, I was desperate to do some Shakespeare. I've always done a great mix of theatre and TV, and I always just sort of thought I wouldn't get the opportunity to do some Shakespeare, and I got to do it. Yeah, in October, and it was one of the best jobs ever.
Which Shakespeare play was it?
It's called All's Well That Ends Well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a good
People
one.
often know the title, but it's actually not done as a play very often because the play is one of his weirder plays.
Yeah.
It's the plot is a little bit dodgy now. Um, in sort of modern times, it doesn't quite work, but it's like this brilliant female lead character, and I had an absolute ball. It was at the Globe. Have you been to the UK?
Yes, I have.
Nice. Have you been to London?
Yes.
So it was at the Globe Theatre, which is the old like Shakespeare theatre we have
Yeah.
on the river.
I have to admit though, London, it wasn't bad. It just wasn't my favorite. I loved the more quiet parts. I loved Oxford. Like, I just loved the quiet and
Mm,
it was just very restful, especially when you would walk into one of the colleges because you couldn't hear anything, no sound.
no.
And in America, that's so rare. Like we're so surrounded, we're so busy. It's really hard to find a place where there is no sound. And that was incredible. I loved that. And like the bookstores and just the little coffee shops. And so London, I definitely thought was really adventurous, but it was very busy.
Yeah, it's definitely a sort of capital city and it's chaos. I think I've grown up here, so it feels manageable, but I imagine coming as a tourist, it must be like but Oxford's lovely. Did you go to Bath?
Yes, yes, we
Nice. Also
did.
very lovely.
That's where I had their fish and chips there, and it was really good.
Good. Where are
Well,
you from?
I was born in Ohio, and
Hmm.
then I've lived in Virginia for a
Okay.
while.
Is
And
that like, are you in a town or a countryside?
I'm in a small town, yeah, so it's in Loudoun County, and then I'm like 50 minutes outside of DC, so I can still get to like shows and stuff if I want to go,
Mm. Oh, that's
but
great.
I'm in a quieter area.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I did want to ask you, this might sound like a weird question, but you were talking about women before. Um, do you do you find anything particularly hard or something you really like, or both, about being a woman? Or do you find it like what do you think about it? Are there ever times that you don't like it very much?
I love being a woman. I feel I feel really happy to be a woman. I think I grew up with an incredibly strong mother who is sort of done it all. She's had 4 kids. She has a career. She's the most fearless person I know,
Hmm.
and is very. I think similarly. I sometimes feel thankful to like not be a super attractive woman because I think then society puts expectations on you where if you're a bit more invisible as just a normal looking woman, you can kind of go through life. I mean, this is such nonsense, probably. This is sort of coming off the top of my head, but you can kind of go through life and just be a normal human. Where I sometimes see my very gorgeous friends and they get so objectified and I feel like they feel the need to keep up this appearance and that their value is in their looks. And I
Yeah.
just think that's so sad. And my mom has just taught me so much that, the way to be valued is, being intelligent and kind and tough. And I don't know, she's so isn't swayed by what people think about her. And it's really rubbed off on me. Her I used to have this thing, when you were a shy teenager and you're like, oh, I can't go out in this outfit. Someone will look at me funny, and she'd go, no one cares. And it sounds harsh, but the thing she was teaching me is like we're all in our own head. If you don't care, no one else is gonna care, and it's carried me through life of just it's not I'm not like an anxious person. I'm really I don't sort of mind if people don't like me or and I'm lucky like I make friends easy and it's not a problem, but I think she's given me a real sense of my own self-worth,
Yeah.
and I feel really lucky for that. I don't
But
need
it
anyone else's validation.
yeah. No. But I feel like don't you think our world is kind of cruel though if you're not beautiful?
Cruel. Well, yeah, it can be, particularly social media is so damaging because you start to think it is important
Yeah.
the way you look, and it so isn't. As long as you, I think, don't care, and as long as you in yourself can be confident and happy, like the world is skewed towards being kinder and more interested in attractive people, but we need to sort of realize that actually it's such a boring, fleeting thing, like good
Yeah.
looks, and that being charming and you know, I think I'm so lucky living in London. I go and see so many galleries, and I get to sort of really expand my mind and read books. And I think that's what's more important, sort of being someone who can have an interesting conversation with someone and be interested in another person. And
Yeah.
that's beautiful more than someone on Instagram having the perfect body. I look at those people
Yeah.
sometimes, and there's a part of me that goes, "Oh, I'd love to be as slim as that," and then I go, "She's probably really boring. I'd probably rather much have a chat with someone who's read a good book."
And you think this is your mom who really, so in your childhood, you kind of got this instilled in you, so when you grew up, it didn't bother you as much as you think it might have?
Yeah, totally. And I think some people, particularly beautiful people, who realize probably quite young that that's how people value you,
Yeah.
and then it's something you have to try and hold on to your whole life. Where if you've never had people value you for your looks, you've never had to try and reach for it. You learn other skills to make people like you. You're kind, or you're funny, or you're and and so your looks are less important, which I
Yeah.
think is such a nicer way to be.
No, I definitely agree with you. I think you are much farther along in your security in this. I definitely still really struggle with. I think body image is the biggest thing for me. I always worry about my weight because there's always someone else. Because like I like to eat, and so there's
Mm-hmm.
always this like, ugh, it's just and then, because I struggle with anxiety and things like that, I have to take medicines, and certain medicines can affect your weight and all these things,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just very, you can never stay the same weight. I mean, I know some people who have, and it's incredible, but at least in my experience, I've never been able to stay like the exact number all the time. Like it will change in whatever season of life I'm in, depending on, am I stressed? You know, um, am I exercising less due to busyness? Whatever it is. And that for me is the hardest thing to become content in. Is just like, because I can't, you think, okay, I'll just drop all of this stuff out of my life. I won't eat any more ice cream or I won't do any more desserts. But then that doesn't work because you just do that for 2 weeks, and then you want the dessert again because, it's, but that for me is the hardest. And it's just like, and then another thing, I don't know if you've had this, but in social media, there's always like, it seems to know what stage of life you're in, and then it tells
Mm-hmm.
you the next stage you should be in. So, like, you're married, right? And then the next stage is you should have kids. And so suddenly all of you have all these baby advertisements and stuff. And it's like, but I'm not there yet. But then it just is like, this is what you should be doing. Now move on to the next stage. And then as soon as you have kids, it's going to talk about the next thing, school, all this stuff. And it's just, it's incredible to me how, yeah, I still, I admire so much your resilience with it because it still affects me too much, I think. And
Mm.
unfortunately, because of podcasting and stuff, you have to be on it. You can't just delete
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I mean, I also have Instagram for work, but I have very strict controls. I literally pay another app to not let me be on it for too long. I'm allowed on it for about an hour a day, and then it's gone.
Really? And then it
Yeah,
shuts off.
yeah.
What
So I
app
can
did
do
you
anything
get?
I. It's just called App Block.
Oh,
It's not that
wow.
expensive. It's been brilliant.
And it just, what
Um,
it'll do, log you off or just like,
yeah, it just comes up with a screen going, you put a time in. So for me, the bit I like looking at first thing in the morning, but that's like my treat time. And then by 11 o'clock, the shutters come down on the app and it goes, you're blocked now for the rest of the day.
that is so
Um,
cool. I've never even heard of that.
yeah, yeah. There's loads of different apps. You can just, if you're willing to pay a tiny bit of money, it's not that expensive. I really would recommend it.
When did you start
Um,
doing that?
Probably about 4 months ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was it
Yeah.
because you noticed you were on it too much, or?
Yeah. You suddenly go, oh, I could have achieved something in this 45 minutes. But in fact, all I think about now is going, don't go and eat that cookie, even though you want it, because you'd rather look like this model, which you're never going to look like because they have
Yeah.
a different body to you. So you can't, whatever you do, you'll never look like that person. And it's so damaging.
What do
And
you
it's,
love to do? Like just like obviously you were mentioning, your pleasure time with the social media that you have that hour. What are other
mm,
things that gives you a lot of pleasure besides acting, obviously?
um, reading. I love novels, particularly. I don't really read non-fiction. Being in nature. I'm always go out like to the park every day. I love exercise. I'm one of those annoying people who genuinely really likes it. Seeing my friends. I see my friends every single day. They
All
make
of
me so
them at
happy.
once?
No, no,
Oh.
but a friend every single day.
Oh wow.
I never have a day without them because I live alone, and for me, socializing is my I get down if I don't socialize. I'm such a an
Yeah.
extrovert. I get all my energy from other people, I think. I sort of even if I'm feeling low in my house, as soon as I'm with a friend, it all just goes and I feel happy again. So I know for me I need to see someone every day. Um
Are you like the person who's very intentional about getting together with people? Like, are you the
yeah.
initiator? Okay.
Yeah. I definitely I text all the time. Basically at the beginning of the week I sort of set up all my all my sort of friend dates with everybody and have something booked in
That
because
is
I know
so
that's what I need.
cool. Yeah. No, I wish I did that more. I think I'm more melancholic at times, and so
Mm-hmm.
it takes me I want to see people, but
Mm,
because I initiate so much, I start feeling like they're not doing anything, and
right.
that makes me feel like, okay, maybe I'm not as wanted
Yeah.
and so then I get more melancholic and I'll find myself not reaching out
Mm-hmm.
just to see if that person will, and then they don't.
Yes, and
And then
that's
I
it.
start thinking, okay, maybe they just don't want to get together. When normally
Yeah.
they're just really busy and being intentional is not really their thing. Like, not in
Yeah.
a bad
And
way.
also, if that person didn't want to see you, they'd just make an excuse and not see you. They want to see
That's true.
you. They do, but you're right. Some people are useless at it. There are some friends I'd never see if I didn't organize it. But I know when we see each other, it's we love each other. It's just that I'm better at it than them. And of course, there's been some people where you try and you're like, this doesn't feel like it's reciprocated, like, and then you give up on them and you go goodbye. I'll hang out with the people I know love me.
What's your longest friendship? Have you had one for a really long time?
I have three from secondary school, which is from age 11.
Wow.
So I have three good friends from them. I don't see them, they're not sort of my really regular friends, but I am very much in contact with them. And then I have one of my oldest best friends is called Ryan. We met on a play. I turned 20 on that job. So we've been friends now for 17 years.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and he's, one of those like life-changing friends where you think, I don't know what the last 17 years would have been like, looked like of my life without him in it. Um, yeah, I feel so lucky with my friendship groups. I think I look at all my friends and I think, wow, if you all want to hang out with me, I'm like pretty happy because you're like the coolest, like cleverest people ever. And it makes me so happy to sort of be with them because I just think they're all awesome people.
Well, when you're talking about Ryan and friendships, and this has been my experience, and I want to get your take on this. Most of my friends, and for myself, it's hard to be friends with guys because what ends up happening is one of you ends up liking the other person. And then you have to
Mm,
admit it, And then the person goes, "Well, I don't like you." Or they
Yeah.
do. And then it makes it weird, and then you're not really friends anymore because like there's this tension that exists. Have you like how has that been for you? Because if I'm being friends, really good friends with a guy for like 17 years, that's incredible. Is
You
that
know what
what
you need
is
to
the
do? You need
yeah.
to work in the arts, and then all your friends will be gay.
Wait.
And so it's not a problem.
Do gay guys make the best friends?
I mean, there's never the issue of whether we're going to fall in love with each other. So
Yeah,
it's an
that's
easy
true.
friendship. So there's no problem with Ryan because Ryan is with his lovely boyfriend Harry.
Well, because I've
Um,
always wondered, because they have the gay friends on the movies, and I've always wondered.
yeah.
I'm like, they seem to get along so well with girls, and then sometimes I've been like, I wonder if I need to get a gay friend.
I mean, yeah, I don't think I like seek them out because they're better friends. They're just probably more in tune with their feelings and there's no sort of complications. I find like straight men, I do have straight male friends, but they're often in a relationship and you don't get as close because they're not as good as socializing. You know, they never text. Straight male friends never text to hang out. You have to be like, hey, I haven't seen you in 3 months. Let's like grab a coffee, and then they're like, oh yeah, okay. So they. I feel like obviously this is a very generalization, but my gay friends are much more like my female friendships, where it's a much easier friendship, and it's you know they're much more open and fun and
Yeah, just more emotive.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I did, I want to ask you, kind of transitioning here, because this was something we were talking about before, but you are in a really unique stage of life, and I did want to talk about this, which I
Hmm.
do want to say to the audience, Ruby was kind enough to talk about this because it's something she's still sharing with people, and it's out, not really out there completely, but she is 4 months pregnant, and she is doing single motherhood by choice. And I've never met a woman who's done it by choice. Obviously, there are single mothers who have had to be single mothers. And Ruby, first of all, I mean, that's so unique. And I want to ask you, like, what gave you that decision? Like, why did you want to do that?
Well, obviously it hasn't been my plan for long. I've always wanted to find a man and get married and do it the sort of traditional way and have a partner and be in love and I've been searching for that since I sort of since you've sort of for, for my whole life, my whole adult life, because I've always known I wanted children.
Hmm.
I come from quite a big family. I have three full siblings and two half siblings, so it's something I don't know. I just want a family for myself. But I've been dating and had relationships, and they've not worked out for different reasons of each thing, and I feel like I've been very obsessed with trying to find someone, and the older I get, the more obsessed I am, and the more it becomes sort of I'm dating, and the only reason I'm dating is to try and find someone to have a baby with,
Yeah.
and it sort of skews your dating. You're going on a first date being like, are they going to be my baby daddy? And you can't really start relationships like that. I think I this year I in April I turned 37, and I just sort of was like, if you want this, maybe you do it yourself. You take the pressure off meeting this guy, and you meet him at a later point in your life when you can meet someone for who they are and
Hmm.
not whether they're going to be the father of your child. And I also would like maybe more than one child, and So I was a bit like, you can't just wait around forever.
Right.
You
No,
know,
I understand.
we sadly do have a time limit, and obviously it's getting later, and people, with help, people can do it much later in life, but I didn't sort of want to wait and miss my chance.
Yeah.
So, and as soon as I think I made that decision, I felt like a kind of release, and like a kind of weight had been lifted off of just going, yeah, you're not going to do it the traditional way. It's not the way you thought you were going to do it. And it's going to be harder, but you will get what you really want. And it doesn't mean I'm never going to have a partner ever again.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah. So, at the beginning of the year, I think I finished that Shakespeare play and I was like, right, you know what? I'm going to have a baby. and, um, And then I started looking into sort of sperm donors and buying. I don't know, in the States, I'm sure it's a completely different system. But in the UK, it's very expensive to buy sperm and then go to a clinic and either do IVF or IUI are the two options. And it costs some money. And I don't have masses of savings. So
Yeah.
I was a bit like, that sounds stressful and I can't really afford it. So then I started asking my male friends, and there was I had my number one choice was my friend called Bill, who I met on the Serpent Queen. He's one of the actors in the Serpent Queen, and I invited him over for dinner, and I just sort of went, Bill, he's bi, and he doesn't want children, and I was just like, Bill, what do you think about giving me some sperm?
Is that
and
how you
and
said
he
it?
yeah, and
You guys
he
must be really close friends.
we are close friends.
You're just like ch cutting your chicken cutlets. So,
So, Bill. And without hesitation, he didn't pause for a second. He said, I'd love to do that for you.
oh wow.
Um, and I was like, okay, well, have a think, because it's quite a big thing I'm asking. And he was like, I don't really need to think. I know I'd like to do that. And obviously, we then did have many more discussions, um, to sort of work it out and how he would feel and how it was going to be. He isn't going to be involved as the father at all, but the baby will know that he is the sort of donor father.
Okay.
I'll never hide that from the baby. And he will obviously be in my life as my friend, but that's all. And then I mean, if you want to know the very intimate details, I don't know how risque you can be on your podcast. It's not very risque. But he came round to my house and I'd bought from Amazon a little cup and a little syringe. And he went up to my bedroom on his own and did what he needed to do in the little cup. And then he left the house and I syringed it out and popped it up me.
Wow.
And I was pregnant first try.
Were you worried that it wasn't going to work the first time?
No, I was totally expecting it not to work the first time.
Okay.
Most people, for instance, my sister, who is now pregnant with her second baby, she's taken sort of 6 months both times with, no complicated, like nothing wrong. It just doesn't take. So in my mind, I was like, try for 6 months and, then we can start being more intentional. Obviously, I was getting the right time, my ovulation time and things. So it was, quite specific, but I 100% was not expecting it to work first time. It was a real shock.
Has it
But
changed your relationship at all? Or no?
no, no, we're just really happy. He's so happy for me. Um, I think he was kind of expecting it to be this bigger thing for him, and then he was like, well, that's kind of over on my part.
Yeah, for
um,
guys, it's not much to do.
no, that's the end. um, but I always send him updates when I have my scan, and he wants to know about things and know how I'm getting on, and it'll be interesting. Obviously, we've spoken about the fact that he won't know how he feels about this child until he sees it and meets it. He
Right.
might
Yeah, sure.
have a real, he thinks he's going to be fine and he thinks he's just going to be happy for me and it will be my baby. But I think that's why I've asked a friend, because if he suddenly goes, "Oh wow, I feel much more strongly towards this child than I was expecting to," he's someone who I love and would love in our life. So it's, if he felt the need to be more involved, I would love that. As well as, I don't expect that from him. That's not the agreement. But if he felt the need for that, then I'd be happy for it as well.
Yeah. And would that just, you think it would look like him just being there more often, like coming by for visits and just,
Yeah, whatever he sort of, if he just needed to see the baby regularly and hang out more, or however it manifests. We can't guess. I guess that's the thing. We can talk about it as much as we can, and we have a relationship where we like to think that however we're feeling, if we're feeling it's feeling difficult, or if it's that we'll always be able to have that difficult conversation. So it's going to be just something we play by ear a bit.
how was it like sharing that with your loved ones? Was that something that they were just completely like, yeah, that's amazing? Or was that hard for you to kind of go, because obviously you're happy. I mean, this is what you've always wanted to have a baby.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's not the traditional way, so I would think there would be some people who'd be a little even just confused, or it would
Mm,
just come a little like as a shock. Was it,
yeah.
how was that
I've
sharing
had
it with
such
people?
a positive reaction from everybody.
Okay.
I think I think everyone who knows me knows how much I want a child. And my parents have been so worried that I'll never meet anyone and that I'm going to miss the opportunity. And when I when I told my dad, he just cried and he went, "I was so worried you were going to miss this." Um, so
Oh.
they're thrilled, absolutely thrilled for me. And my parents luckily live in London and are going to be big support network for me. As is my sister who lives in London too. Um, so I couldn't, I don't think I would have chosen to do it without their knowing I would have their support. And they are, my parents are both baby obsessed. They love babies. I feel like sometimes I don't think my mum will ever listen to this podcast, but my mum has put a lot of pressure on me my whole life to have a baby.
Um,
It's for her, having us four kids is the best thing in her life and like the most important thing in her life. And she is definitely someone who puts her opinion onto you. And I don't. I mean, luckily, I have always wanted children, but I do not know how she would have reacted if I'd said, which a lot of people are doing, and I'm pleased that people are making that decision for themselves. But if I'd said to her, "Oh, I don't think I want children," it would have been a very difficult conversation.
yeah, it would probably be, it would be crushing because she really wants to be a grandmother, it sounds like.
Yeah, but she's got already quite a few grandchildren, but she wants more. She could never have enough grandchildren.
What is one thing that you've always imagined doing with your child that you can't wait to do?
Ooh. Well, I love putting on music and dancing around my house. Nothing makes me happier. Um, so I can't wait to have a baby and do that with. Obviously, when they're a little bit older, but just sort of putting on music and being silly and dancing around the house.
What kind of music like do you like?
Sort of old pop music. I'm I'm really old fashioned with my music choices. I love sort of 60s and 70s pop music.
That's, that I don't know if you would do this. I mean, it'd be so neat to do a documentary of your journey and then you could show it to your child when they're,
Yeah.
yeah, because she would ha he or she, they're gonna have this story, this backstory of a mom who just really wanted a child and decided to do it and
Mm.
get to see that journey. And then I don't know, I just see the documentary with you guys like dancing around and then it would be
Yeah,
very
you should.
sweet.
Yeah, I hope Bill weirdly has had more strong reactions from his friends than I had. All of my friends have been positive, but a few of his friends couldn't understand why he wanted to do that. And and then he had one friend who said, so I don't think you should bring a child into the world without a father figure, which I do slightly understand. But this child's going to be so loved and it's going to have so many male figures in its life. I've got two brothers. I've got lots of male friends. I've got my dad. And I think there's one thing I think, I think a lot of people have real issues with being abandoned by particularly often, sadly, fathers. But
Yeah.
this child's never going to have that because there was never a father there to abandon him
Yeah.
or her. So so I don't know why I've gone off on this. But yes, yeah, just the fact that it was interesting that Bill has had much more pushback against the idea than I have.
You
Yeah,
know,
so that's something also to note in my journey, maybe for this. Yeah, we're trying to write it down. I don't keep a diary or anything, but I have been trying to write some of this down because it is kind of extraordinary how.
it's very unique. And because a lot of women also wouldn't choose it. Even if they really wanted a child, they wouldn't choose
No.
it. Because I mean,
No.
it's also scary. That means you're going to be the sole provider for the child. And,
Yeah.
you're like, obviously, I'm so glad you have your parents, but you are going to be the one parent, that the child
Yeah.
is completely depending upon for everything. And that's a lot of responsibility for you.
Yeah. Particularly, I work in this freelance, very unreliable profession. Um, because of this feeling of going, I don't know when I'm going to next have a job. And now, because I've started to start showing, I don't know if I'm going to be able to book an acting job before the baby arrives in October. Um, I've got a job at a pub starting
Really?
tomorrow. I've got my first shift tomorrow. Um,
You could
because I just
you
want to.
could play a pregnant woman.
Yeah, I've asked my agent to get me an episode of Call the Midwife. Do you know that show?
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yes.
Yeah. I was like, come on, get me an episode of that. That'd be perfect. So she's trying. But yeah, so I'm gonna try and earn. I mean, obviously, just only doing part time, but a bit of sort of hospitality work until the baby comes in October. And then we'll see. It's the kind of. It is scary. It is a sort of, I have some savings. Like similarly, I have a home in London and I have savings, and I'm not kind of. I think for
Yeah.
a lot of people, it would be financially a very impossible thing to do, but it's there's going to be elements that are hard. But I just was. I also think you'll always find an excuse not to do something, and if you want it,
Sure. Yeah.
you've got to just do it. It's never going to be the perfect time. It's never going to be. But if you've got that feeling that you want to do it, you got to do it.
Is there anything you're scared about, like just being a mom in general? Because I
Yeah,
have to be honest with you, being a mother terrifies me. Like,
yeah.
I'm just,
I
ugh.
think.
I'm like, I love looking at children. I love holding kids. I love seeing them. But I always like just I think the responsibility. And then I've had
Mm-hmm.
so many friends who've had such painful pregnancies. Like they've had the baby, but like the pregnancy was awful. And so I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to see it as a positive experience until they're like 7. And I'm like, well, I can't
Right.
skip till 7.
No, that's quite a long time. um, for me, my biggest fear is loneliness. I think it's something I suffer with a bit anyway. and so that's why I have the need to always see friends. And I think a baby can be quite isolating. I know luckily I'm a very socially confident person, and I will go to every baby group, and I will sort of
You will.
chat to any person I can meet, because I know I'll be like, if I talk to this baby any longer, I'm gonna explode. I need some adult conversation. So that's my fear, and I really hope, obviously, to have as good a birth as possible, because I want to try to get mobile and get out my house as soon as possible so I can start socializing again. Yeah. But so do you, yeah. It's funny, some people really like the baby bit, but you're just not a. Do you know many babies? Do your friends have babies?
Oh, it's yeah, I love children, I do, but I had a very hard childhood and
Okay.
my parents they weren't like I definitely believe God had a plan and we were born for a reason and I'm grateful to be alive, but they were not great parents. And so
Right.
I have a lot of scars from that. And
Mm-hmm.
so you know, for me, for instance, like I even have health anxiety, right? So like if I have a tummy ache, you
Mm-hmm.
would think, or at least I'm assuming you would think, oh, I just have a tummy ache. I ate something or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
My first thought is I have a tumor. I'm going to die. I have
Right, yeah.
cancer. So for me, it's like, okay, well, pregnancy naturally will change your body. You'll have different symptoms, and you just have to kind of go with them, right? Just let them go. Just let them
Yeah.
gradually go with it. That's the hard thing. And then I don't want to ever hurt a child, like mentally have them look back and
Mm-hmm.
think, I did not have my mom was just not there in that moment, or she was so frazzled all the time, and I could just never feel restful. Like I'd always want my children to feel like I always want to go home. If I know something bad happens in my life, I can go home and I will
Mm-hmm.
feel at rest and peace. But it was something I never had. So it's just so
Yeah.
hard to imagine doing that from scratch with no um
Yeah, you haven't been
backdrop.
taught that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard now too because I mean, and to be honest with you, like, because I am a Christian, I believe in Jesus, and in the Christian faith, it's not a bad thing, but there's a really big emphasis on family. And so when there's
Mm-hmm.
people like me who have had trauma or it's very difficult, it's hard to find women who understand what you're talking about. Because usually it's like either they've always wanted to be a mother and there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing else they've ever wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
or they just have children and it's not a problem. Like it's just like part of life. It's the next thing you do.
Yeah.
Um, and so it is hard to express. It's like, yes, I love the Lord. I trust this, but you have to understand, like, I'm deeply hurt. And so
Mm-hmm.
to go to this next step for me isn't easy, like for you. But there's just not I haven't met enough people who have felt that way. So it does feel a little isolating because you're like, I love children. Like I see a child and my face glows and I think they're beautiful.
Mm.
And to see a mother pick her kid up and like, just get to do those fun things and the fact that a child says mommy and like knows who their mother is out of everybody. Those
Yeah.
are precious moments, but it's just hard because it's hard to explain to someone because then they think, well, you just don't like kids. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I do. I love children. They're wonderful.
Yeah, but it's a worry for you.
Yeah. I don't know if that
But
makes any sense.
it completely makes sense, and I think you're amazing for, I think a lot of people with trauma just blindly go into having children and not worrying about, what that's going to pass down to them. I think the fact that you're very thoughtful about it, and it means that if you do become a mother, you're going to be so intentional about what you want to on to that child and what you don't. I think it's something, you clearly are thinking about, and it means that you have that caring instinct in you to do the right thing, and you're going to work really hard to do it how you want it to be rather than how you had it happen for you.
No, yeah. That's very kind of you to say. I would hope so. I
But
definitely would.
also, do you ever think maybe you don't want children? Because that's a possibility. If you don't have to have them.
I have thought about that, but I think it would have to be something that would have to be because I think my husband would love, he would love them. So I think
Yeah.
to say no to that forever, I think that would be very hard for him.
Hmm.
So it would have to be something that kind of came to him as well. I mean, obviously he wouldn't force it or anything, but that I think would be very hard for him.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because it's funny because like you're in this stage where you really want a husband, but you get to
Yeah.
choose the pregnancy. And now it's like I am married, but it's more complicated because now there's someone else you have to think about, who their
Yeah.
feelings matter and what they want. But I don't, I saw on your Instagram that you have a cat, right? A black cat.
Oh yeah. Olive's not with me anymore, sadly.
Okay,
But
because she passed away.
yeah.
I wanted to ask you about this because another thing that has been hard for me when I think of children is I have a cat in the back of me. His
Mm.
name's Knightley. And we got him in part because of the anxiety that I have, just to be like this
Hmm.
emotional support animal. He's only a year and a half, and we took him to the vet, and they found that he had a genetic heart condition, and he'll die by like
Mm.
5 if he's
Oh
lucky.
no. Yeah.
So I was blubbering, right?
Yeah,
Just
I bet.
blubbering. And I thought, if I respond this way to an animal dying in my life, I was like, how am I going to respond to a human that I love if something terrible happens to them? That was, I was like, because I've never had a pet before.
Mm.
And so, I mean, I don't know if for you, what it was like, but like, I cannot imagine, like, I'm like already like, I'll have to be prepared. They're gonna go. But I thought I had like 15 years with them or whatever.
Yeah. That's really upsetting.
So I don't know. But I mean, like for you, do you process grief well? Like how, when you lost your pet, did you?
I think so. I mean, obviously, it was heartbreaking, and I wasn't there. I was filming in France, and she was living with my parents, and I felt so guilty not being there for when she got ill and went. Um, and I miss her so much. For instance, like now when we sat on my sofa, she would be on my lap. She was the neediest cat. I used to like walk around like a little baby with her, and she brought me so much comfort. Um, so yeah, it's sad, but also like with anything, like if you didn't have your cat, you're gonna have, uh, you have to think. I might, if you didn't make that step to have the cat in the first place, you're not gonna have these great years with it.
That's
If you always
true.
had
Yeah.
fear that the something bad is going to happen or you won't be able to deal with the grief, then you'll miss out on so many life things. You're going to give this cat a lovely life, and it's going to bring so much love to you. And when it happens, it's going to be heartbreaking, but it doesn't sort of get rid of that love and joy you've had for the last few years with it. And you have to
No,
sort of
yeah.
go, it was worth it. It's worth the grief. It's worth the sadness to have had all the amazing bits as well.
Ruby, I wish you lived next door. I think I would just come and be like, "Hello." I have
Yeah,
to
I'd
say,
like
this
that.
has been such a lovely interview, and I mean, just to get to know you, I mean, you are full of courage and personality, and I can see why you have so many friends. So
It
I'm so grateful we got to talk like this, and you helped
was so
me. I feel
nice.
like you kind of interviewed me too, so
It was really nice chatting.
it was, and I really hope your pregnancy goes well, and
Oh,
that
thank you so much.
maybe you'll be on a call the midwife episode, and that'll be incredible.
Yes, watch out. I want to do one. I'll put it into the world.
Okay. All right, Ruby, will you have a good night?
Thank you. Thanks for having me,
Bye.
Kay. Bye.